Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Rachel. If this is your first time here, welcome. And if it's not your first time here, thanks for coming back. So today, I'm going to be doing my monthly palette ranking. Basically what I'm doing is I'm giving you kind of mini speed reviews on palettes that I've been testing, new palettes that have come into my collection, and these are palettes that I've tested several times to have my final thoughts on them. So these palettes aren't exactly like the newest palettes in my collection, but these are a group of palettes that now I've had a good amount of time with, to play with, to test, to use in different ways, and now I have my final thoughts and I do it in a ranking style. This is my last palette ranking that you will be seeing from me before I do my ranking every single palette I've tried this year video, which should be coming up at the end of December. I'm scared. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little scared. I've tried so many palettes this year. I still have so many palettes that I am trying to test out before I film that video to fit into the video. There might be some that you've seen me acquire recently that are just gonna go into the beginning of next year because there's only so much time left in the year and I only have one phase. So, you know, I'll see what I can do. I'm going to link all of these palettes down below in the description box if they are available, and everything else that is on my face today will be in the description box as well. And if you enjoy this while you're watching it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I have something in my eye and I cannot see it, but I can feel it. You know that feeling? So if my left eye starts twitching, just ignore it. So a little disclaimer before we get to the ranking. This is all based on my own opinion, my own experience, my own thoughts. So if you don't agree with my palette ranking, that is totally okay with me. I'm not gonna take it personally, and I don't want you to take it personally either. This is just based on my own preference, my own perspective on color story, whether or not I'm really wanting to reach for the palette, whether I'm drawn to it. Also, the theming and the packaging does matter to me as well, and formula as well. I have 8 palettes, well, technically more than 8 palettes, but I'm ranking 8 places, grouping a couple of palettes together. So let's get started with number 8. This palette is the only palette I would say that is not great quality. It's not really a palette I would suggest or recommend picking up. And that is the Dose of Colors X Trevor Eternal Love palette. It is actually what I'm wearing on my eyes. And listen, at the end of the day, the look turned out. Okay, the look slayed, if you will. It's a journey. It's a journey to get there. I'm not trashing this palette at all, especially because it was a creator that collaborated, and I think that in and of itself is a great feat, is a great accomplishment to be able to collaborate with one of your favorite brands. So I definitely think that there is an audience for this. I don't think it's terrible quality or anything like that, but it is just not in my preference. And I think for the price point, that is where I'm a little hesitant to recommend it. The palette does retail for $52, which is a little bit pricey. But I will tell you, I did own the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette that they came out with many years ago from Desi and Katie. So my expectation going in to this palette was I was thinking the quality and the formulas were going to be similar, if not the same. And I don't think that the quality of the mattes or the shimmers is anything like the Friendcation palette at all whatsoever. I mean, of course, it's been many years since the Friendcation palette has launched, so clearly they've changed their formula or lab or something like that. So this palette has a row of mattes at the top with also a matte black. I really love that there's a matte black, and I do really love the range of tones and like depths in the mattes. I definitely wish that there would be one, like maybe a purple matte, just something slightly colorful. It doesn't even have to be an outrageous like blue color, but there are a lot of colorful mattes here that I think would benefit from just one colorful matte. Listen, this is not my palette, it's not my vision, but I'm just telling you like what would make it a little bit more stepped up for me. The mattes in this are very, very lightly pigmented, very lightly pigmented. I think very different from the Friendcation palette. Those mattes were very buttery, buildable, not overly pigmented, but definitely more pigmented than these. These are very powdery, not super pigmented. So that may be a good or a bad thing depending on your preference. I don't mind a matte that's not ultra pigmented, but these were just a little sheerer than I like. And then these shimmers are very dry. Some are more opaque than others, but I would say overall just I'm spoiled with indie brands. There are brands like Unearthly Cosmetics, Odin's Eye, Nomad Cosmetics, where their shimmers, generally speaking, are just like ultra, like wet looking, smooth on the lid, one swipe. These are not that. And so maybe if you like more of a sheer wash of color, a little bit of sparkle, more of a textured dry shimmer. And I know there are people out there that like that. This could be for you, but I definitely also think you can get something like this at a lower price point. I hope that made sense. I don't think it's a bad palette. It's just not in my preference. I definitely don't see myself reaching for this. And I know that the vision, like what Trevor said, was he wanted a bunch of neutral mattes that you could add just like a pop of color with one of the shimmers on the lid. I think generally that idea is really smart. But just like the quality of the shadows is just not what I expected and not what is in my preference. Coming in at number 7, I have the Natasha Denona Xenon palette. So in terms of quality, I think this is amazing. The good Natasha Denona quality that I come to expect. And honestly, the shimmers in this are beautiful. There's different types of shimmers. Some are textured, some are smooth, some are toppers, some are opaque, some have that extra little sparkle to them. I mean, unbelievable shimmers in my opinion. I think every time she comes out with a midi palette, at least the ones that I've tried lately, the shimmer formula just keeps getting better and better and better. And the mattes in this are good, usual Natasha Denona quality, very easy to build up, not overly pigmented, but definitely pigmented enough that they show up true to pan. My only complaint with this is the color story, and I don't want to start like a big debate, and if you don't agree with me, it's totally okay. I'm not like a huge cool tone lover, so automatically like it's not going to be my favorite palette of the ones that I've tried lately, but also I think that there is something with this palette, and I had someone comment on my video. They said they were an optometrist, and they're thinking that this is kind of like that meme from years ago with the dress where it's like either you see blue and black or you see white and gold. Like I sat with my husband and I showed this to him and I said, do you see pink and blue in this? And he goes, yeah, pink, blue. And he pointed to the ones that are pink. And I'm looking at this, guys. I'm not trying to mess around, but like I don't see pink or blue. I just don't see it. I see grays. I see blacks, I see whites. It might be my eyes. That's what it comes down to. Like, this is a white, gray, black palette to me. I don't see any color at all. It just might be my eyesight. It's a color story thing. I will continue to use this as a companion palette. And actually the looks that I did create from this, I actually really liked. I think this would have benefited from a matte black. That would have been really spectacular. Do I have a matte black in my collection? Yes. Do I have many matte blacks in my collection? Yes. Do I have Natasha Denona matte blacks in my collection? Also, yes. So it's not the end of the world, but if I am putting it up against these other palettes, this one is just falling a little behind. By the way, if I did receive these in PR, I will pop a PR up somewhere in the corner. And if I do have a code with the brand, I will pop that up on the screen as well. So coming in at number 6, I'm grouping these two palettes together because I feel similarly about them. These are the two palettes from the Unearthly Cosmetics Summer Mystery Box that they released this year, the Get Groovy and the Spaced Out palette. Another reason I'm grouping these together is I had a really nice time pairing these two together. And I think that Amanda, the owner of Unearthly, was really smart about making these two palettes that came out at the same time really work very well together. So the Spaced Out palette is the smaller 8-pan palette. I think it's really pretty. I love that there is an even mixture of mattes and shimmers, and Unearthly's formulas just keep getting better and better and better in my opinion. The shimmers are just very beautiful, sparkly. Some are more topper shades, some are more opaque, some have shifts, some don't. I mean, there's just a variety of different formulas in here, which I love. I love, love, love when a brand puts different shimmer formulas in their palettes. And the mattes are just like good Unearthly mattes where they're quite pigmented, but not hard to work with. The only reason this is coming in this part of the countdown versus higher up is just, again, a color story thing. I'm not really going to reach for these colors on an everyday basis. There are other palettes I like a little bit more in terms of color story coming up, but quality-wise, very, very good. I love that I have these in my collection. I will use them as companion palettes, absolutely. But many times, I don't really combine palettes. It's not super often. And I was thinking about this. When I do combine palettes, it's mostly when I go on vacation or I'm traveling, which is like, to me, seems backwards. Like when I'm at home, I have access to all of my however many palettes I have right there at my fingertips. And I'm too lazy to reach like down to the second drawer to pull out a second palette. But when I'm traveling, it seems like I want to pack about 5 palettes and use them all together. Is anyone else like that, or is that just me? So, I mean, what I mean is, I probably would pack these if I was traveling together because I do feel like they are like good companion palettes, or one with another palette or something. But like as standalone palettes. There are just other ones I like a little bit more in this countdown. Coming in at number 5, I have the ColourPop 1111 palette. So this is a really, really beautiful, beautiful neutral palette. The whole collection itself was a beautiful collection. I did receive almost everything in the collection in PR. I didn't get the lipsticks, but I got like the blushes, I got the shadow sticks, and I really love a neutral palette, and I think this one is really, really well done and really structured. We've got light to deep in both the mattes and the metallics. You have this gorgeous, like very, very smooth white shimmer that you can put in your inner corner. You have 4 more kind of mid-tone to deep browns that are in different undertones. So you can get a warm look, you can get a cool look. We have 5 very, like besides this one shimmer, the other 5 shimmers are again, very different in terms of undertone, and you can get different looks with them. They have one of these like sparkle hybrid shimmers, which I don't love them, but I don't hate them either. They're pretty. They're a little chunkier, but I don't mind having one in the palette. But the thing that's kind of keeping this from coming up at the higher part of the ranking, again, the other palettes that I have coming up, I just like more in terms of quality. The mattes in this are very sheer. It's a little bit hard to build them up, which again may be a plus for you, but the mattes are a little hard pressed maybe in the pan, and just I had a hard time getting them to the full pigment that you see in the pan, if that makes sense. But overall, like if you're looking for more of a lightly pigmented palette, if you're more new to makeup, or I think this would be a really nice gift for someone in your life that's not a huge makeup lover, like can have one palette and they wear neutrals all the time and they don't consume beauty social media and they're not like super detailed with their makeup. I think this would be a great gift because they can use one matte, just kind of haphazardly throw it through their crease onto their lid and take a shimmer and pop it on their lid. And it's pretty foolproof, but just for me, it's a little sheer in terms of the mattes, and I just prefer the other palettes coming up more. Coming in at number 4, so many people thought this was such a boring release, but I actually really like this palette a lot, and it's the Travel palette from Nomad Cosmetics. This is, for me, a better condensed version of this ColourPop palette. Now, it's smaller, so I'm not gonna get a ton of variety. You get more variety with the ColourPop, but I think the quality of these shadows is much more stepped up. Now, of course, the price point is very different. Nomad is an amazing indie brand, and they release products based on different destinations around the world. And they did recently just do like a mini collection with a few different products for like air travel. And I love what they did with this, and I love neutrals, and I love the layout of this. You have 3 varying depths with browns. You have 3 varying depths with shimmers. These shimmers are the good Nomad shimmer formula that I love, where it's like ultra smooth yet sparkly, opaque, not chunky, not like gonna fall out, just beautiful. You can use one for the inner corner. You've got 2 different shimmer options. If you wanna make it deeper, if you wanna make it more mid-tone, you can build up different mattes. Obviously, I really, really enjoy it, and I am gonna enjoy traveling with it. Coming in at number 3, I have the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Sickly Sweet palette. So this, in my opinion, is a pastel palette done right, or done right for me, like for what I like. I am not someone that's gonna reach for an entirely pastel palette where everything is light very often. It will be more of a companion palette for me, and this will still be a companion palette for me, and I have reached into this if I want a matte inner corner highlight in a certain color. And that is really offered in this, quite obviously. The shimmers in this are very pretty, sparkly, smooth, really, really, really nice shimmers. And I love that there are some deeper tones in here, so I can use this as a standalone palette if I want to get a deep look, which traditionally, like I would say 7 times out of 10, I am gonna reach for a deep matte for my outer corner whenever I do a look. Not always, but 7 times out of 10. This has got those different options for a deeper matte if I want to deepen it up. It's also a companion palette. It's also the good Blend Bunny quality. The mattes from Blend Bunny, if you've been here before, I'm a broken record. They have one of my favorite matte formulas ever, probably top 3. Just incredible, perfect amount of pigment. It's not messy, it's not scary to use, yet it shows up true to pan. And I think this is a really fun, different Halloween collection, something that is not expected and that it can carry throughout the year. Coming in at number 2, I have 2 of the Game Beauty Elemental Blast palettes. I really, really love these. So what happened was I bought this one in Geo, and I think of the 2, I do prefer this one slightly if I had to pick. I mean, this to me it's a perfect everyday palette for me because it's neutral, but it's not like straight up boring all browns. You have this gorgeous like macaroni and cheese shade. I could have done probably without one of these, but they are different formulas. This one up here is a satin shade and this one is a matte. So I like using either of these for the inner corner. I love the different shimmer options. We do have a special shade up here. It's not overly shifting, but it does add a little extra interest. And then we have different tones for the mid-tone to deeper mattes. We have both warm and cool. I think this is set up beautifully. And the one in the colorway Pyro, I did receive in PR. So this one I bought and this one they sent me later. I love a warm tone eye. This is very fiery. I think this one has less variety in terms of the tones than the Geo one, but I'm putting them together because I do like both of them. I like the color stories of both of them, and I think the quality of them are obviously very similar. I would hope so. They came out at the same time. The mattes in these, I think, are a good example of a more buildable matte that isn't like ultra sheer where it's like, I'm never going to build it up to make it look like it does in the pan. They do build up, but they are more of that silky, like soft type of matte. They're not powdery. So they are a little bit more slippy, but I think in a good way. And the shimmers in these are just like very smooth yet sparkly, which is my favorite type of formula. They're not chunky, they're not textured, they're just gorgeous. I love how small and compact these are, and in particular, these 2 were the ones that called to me the most in terms of color story, but they did come out with a whole bunch of different colorways. Maybe at some point I'll pick them up, but I'm really impressed with these 2 palettes. This is my first experience with Game Beauty. Coming in at number 1, can I get a drum roll, please? I have to admit, I am slightly biased, but if I take out the personal relationship I have with the creator that did this, I still think that these are my number 1. Like they speak for themselves. And this is the Odin's Eye and Angelica Nyqvist Halloween collection. These are, listen, okay. Let's talk about the theme. I love me a spooky themed palette. I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. So automatically, like when I received these in the mail and I opened up the package, I gasped. I just love the theming. I love the packaging. We have Angelica on the cover in her spookiness. 2 different colors, like themed in terms of the packaging. So we have the little ghost palette, which is more of like a bright, fun, whimsical Halloween take on a palette. It's not your typical like blacks, grays, reds. We have a little bit more of that colorful blue, purple up top, and then we have a row of these gorgeous warm tones on the bottom. And then I think of the 2, I prefer the Trick or Treat palette just because it is a little more warm tones, greens. I mean, really. The quality of these palettes is the good Odin's Eye quality that I come to expect. The mattes are a little bit more on the pigmented side, but not hard to use. Odin's Eye typically puts in different shimmer formulas, so we've definitely got a few different shimmer formulas in here. Some are a little more textured, some are a little more smooth, and some are special shades. I really love in the Trick or Treat palette this little section right here where it's like, I can get a neutral look that's like warm and deep and yummy, like kind of apple cidery. Oh, that's all I needed this fall. And if I want to reach in and get a pop of color, this is a palette that I'm absolutely going to reach in for. I really, really love the fact that both palettes go from light to deep in both the mattes and the metallics. Angelica loves a matte inner corner. So I do love that there are some pops of like lighter mattes, like pastel mattes that you can reach into in these palettes, which I've really been loving this year. And I think that they did a phenomenal job. What else can I say? They're my favorite palettes out of these bunch that I've tried lately. All right, and that is it for this palette ranking video. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to know your thoughts on any of the palettes I talked about today. Do you agree with my rankings? Do you not agree with my rankings? It's totally cool if you do or don't, but I would love to hear your thoughts because I love hearing from you. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot when you do that. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you would consider subscribing before you leave. I do upload videos weekly, and I'd love to see you back on my channel again. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.